pretty fun. I think it turned out good. Welcome to Tobar's Realm. Today I think I'm gonna make a model of Thors hammer, or Myolnir, I believe is how you pronounce it. So I just kind of made a pattern out of beer box cardboard just to see kind of what I'm dealing with. And I'm just going to use a bunch of 1/4 inch scrap plate I got. Some of it's got some welds on it, but I got a bunch that the back sides don't have anything, so I can use that. And it's about 9.5 inches long or wide, and about 5.5 inches square this way. So I'm just going to start off by getting enough pieces of the scrap cut to start making the rough shape of it. And then I was kind of thinking, for those runes and stuff that are on the facets here, if maybe I could etch that into the metal and then put some brazing to fill in those low spots and sand it off so it'll have brazen rod inlay on there for those runes. We'll see how it ends up working out, but that's what I'm thinking. And then on the inside I think I'll fill it with lead, so this thing will weigh a ton, just to kind of mimic how only Thor can pick it up. I'm going to start by getting some of these cut out to make these patterns. Alright, so I got quite a few of the patterns roughly ready to go. Got the large pieces welded together. Got some of the pieces ready to weld together for the corners between these larger ones. A bunch of the small ones for the facets on the face of the hammer. And got to finish these up. So I'm going to start just by finishing cutting these out. Start cleaning up some of the crappy edges on these ones. Alright, so here's my idea to put the patterns in the facets of the face of the hammer. I just made a little pattern here that I want to put into the metal, and I just use my center punch. I'm going to drill it with just a 16-inch drill bit, so I can do a little groove in there that I can fill with brazing rod. I don't know if it's going to work, but this is my idea. Alright, well, I started doing the little drill holes and then tried the Dremel to connect the holes, and that didn't really work, so now I'm using a tiny little chisel just to follow these lines, just chiseling it in, and that seems to be working pretty good. Just need it deep enough where that brazing will get down in there, and then when I sand it off it'll leave a nice pattern on there. So I'm just going to continue following these dotted lines to get the pattern chiseled in there. Alright, I got all the chiseling done on all of these. I think they turned out pretty good. I hope that idea with the brazing and sanding it off will work. That these are deep enough that it'll fill up with the brazing, and then I can sand it smooth. So now I'm going to spend some time just getting these sized up, get the edges cleaned up, get these longer pieces ready to go. Those will go along the sides. Alright, making pretty good progress getting parts ready here. Here's the sides. I put the etching in so when I do the brazing, and did the same on the bottom piece. Mark the center because I'm going to notch a hole out there to attach the handle all the way through. And here's the top. Put the top, just a hole through the top so I can weld a circle plate on it from the inside. And got these ones tacked in place. So I think now I'm going to tack these other ones on here. and see where I go from there, I guess. Alright, getting started on the handle here. Here's what I'm going to use. I think this is one of those drill bits for drilling down into rock. But I think it'll make a good handle. So this part I was going to go all the way through the head and weld on the top and the bottom. And I'm going to notch this bottom plate to get it around there, and then it'll have room to put the lead inside, and then I'll just weld that plate back on. So I'm just going to cut this off at a little long, and then I'll cut it off to the exact length later. So I'm going to get this cut off and cleaned up a little bit. Alright, I got the handle cleaned up, and like I said, I cut it off a little long so I can cut it to the length I need. Got the notch put in the bottom, so I'll go like that. And it's not quite long enough, so I'll probably just cut off another piece of that shaft and shim it in there and weld it. I think that'll be the easiest way, because it's about 1.5 inches or so that it needs to have a gap there. So now I think I'm going to go ahead and just weld the rest of these on. So they're just tacked together, but I think I'm ready to weld them, get them on there. Alright, I got that handle spacer put in there and welded. I had it tacked together, but it wasn't quite lined up, so I broke it loose, and I'm gonna start tacking these together again. Start putting those other panels on, just get it tacked in place. Let's start on that. Alright, so I got it all tacked together. A couple spots, there's some gaps I'm gonna have to try to fill in. A little bit there. I got that hole where I can fill it with lead once all these welds are done. So I'm just going to go ahead and start welding on this. Do a little, let it cool for a while, do a little more. So get started on that. Alright, got it all welded up here. Mostly, I think. It's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to go back and sand off all these welds, kind of start refining it, see if there's any low spots I need to go back and add some more material to, but I'd say it's looking pretty good so far. Something I'm working on now is the handle. It's a little too small. It's like 1 inch diameter. It's just a little too small. So what I think I'm going to do is, I got this piece of scrap pipe that I think I'm gonna cut it in half and kind of cut it in these, what is it, scallop or scale, whatever, and then I can weld them on the handle and kind of nest them a little bit so it goes up the handle, and then I'll just weld them on there, and then I'll braze along the edges. I think that'll work just to make the handle a little bit bigger. So I'm going to start by cutting this pipe in half and then get some more of those pieces out of it. Alright, I got all these pieces cut. I haven't cleaned them up yet, but I just kind of crushed the one end of it with the vise so they can nest inside of each other. So I'll put them like that along the handle, just to weld them, put the next one, weld it, and then I'll do brazing all the way around. I'll have to fine tune how they fit together still, but I'm going to start by just getting that end crunched together so they can nest inside of each other. Alright, continuing on the handle here, I just made this little collar out of the same pipe as those other pieces and kind of crunched it together. I need to get it welded and ground off, but that'll be the starting spot for all of these pieces, and then they'll be put on there like that. So I'm going to get the little collar welded and kind of start doing these and sizing them as I go, because it's kind of hard to get them just right when they're all moving around and stuff. So start getting this welded and get a couple pairs of those pieces started on here. Alright, I got the handle all finished up, and then the end piece, ended up putting a simple end on here. Wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I'm happy enough with that. It's not great, but I like it well enough. But the handle turned out pretty good. I think I'm hopeful that brazing all these edges and stuff will make it look good. So now I think it's time to go back and sand this down. I'm gonna pretty much sand the whole thing, and then might have to go back and chisel these lines in a little bit deeper. Depends, we'll see. So we'll get started on that. Alright, just going through and re-chiseling some of this that got sanded off when I was cleaning it up. So gotta go through and do all these again. Alright, I think I'm ready to start brazing these lines in there. I just did a little test piece just to try it out before I hit this thing with it. So I think I'll start on these two bigger lines on top. Try that first. Alright, I got all the brazing done on the head of the hammer. So I'll just grind that off to expose that pattern. So now to start on the handle. Alright, I've just been using the grinder to take off the brazing that I did. That one's looking pretty good. This one I think I'm going to have to go back and do a little they're not filled up quite all the way, but I'm just going to continue grinding this off and see what we got. Alright, basically finished sanding it all down again after doing the brazing. That went pretty well. And the handle, when I wire wheeled it, the brass kind of smeared around on the handle, so I think I'm going to leave it that way. I think that looks kind of cool, like gold colored. But yeah, that brass inlay idea worked pretty well, I think. So with this part being done, I guess it's time to fill it with the lead. So I'm going to have to mess around with that for a while. And I think I'll weigh it now and then weigh it after, see how much is in it. $21. Alright, I got it basically filled with lead. It could hold a tiny bit more, but that's good enough, I think. It's looking pretty cool with the changing color because of the heat. That brass inlay looks really neat. Alright, now that I got the lead poured in there and it's cooling, it'll probably take hours to cool off, but I'm trying to figure out a display mount for it. I'm thinking maybe this chunk of wood I can like maybe countersink a hole where the hammer can kind of sit down in it up at an angle. So I'm gonna kind of mess with this, see if it'll work out. Alright, it's cooled now after filling it with the lead, and that looks really cool with the bluing of the heat from the lead in it. But I'm gonna have to sand all that off. I'll be putting that little cap on here and welding it on and then sand it all off. But now let's see how much it weighs now, because it was 21 pounds before. Let's check it now. Oh God. 105.6. Alright, I've just been working on chiseling out a recess there for the hammer to sit in, and I think that'll work. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to put a finish on this, just stain it in a clear coat. Stain it with just natural color, not any kind of dark color or anything, but I think it's about time to weld that little hatch back on here and shine it up again. I'm gonna do that. Alright, all done. Got the display pedestal thing done. Turned out alright, I guess. It's pretty fun. I think it turned out good. Thanks for watching. Till next time.